It was a cold February evening when the traffic camera on Miller's Bridge captured something no one could explain. The bridge, stretching quietly over the icy river below, had been the site of countless sunsets and more than a few tragedies. That night, however, something remarkable happened. A lone figure appeared walking toward the railing. A man, coat dusted with snow, moving slowly as if each step weighed a lifetime. What the footage didn't capture right away was the second figure, a dog. A thin, scruffy shepherd mix, ribs visible beneath its matted fur, following a few steps behind the man. At first, it looked like a stray searching for food. But what came next turned that assumption into something extraordinary. The man, later identified as Daniel Moore, a 42-year-old construction worker from out of town, had been reported missing that morning. Life had hit him hard, laid off, divorced, and drowning under debt. His car had broken down just miles from that bridge, and something inside him decided he couldn't take another step forward. Witnesses later said they saw him standing still for minutes, staring down into the frozen current below, his hands trembling against the railing. That's when the stray dog appeared out of the darkness. According to the report, Daniel ignored the dog at first, but the animal wouldn't leave. It barked softly, then louder, pacing nervously beside him, nudging his leg. Daniel tried to push it away, muttering something no one could hear, but the dog only pressed closer, whining, pawing at his coat. Then, just as Daniel began to lean forward, the dog lunged, grabbing his sleeve in its teeth and yanking hard. The sudden movement startled him, snapping him out of his trance. He turned, shouted, and the dog barked again, sharp, desperate, like it was begging him to live. That's when Daniel broke. He fell to his knees on the cold concrete, tears mixing with snow, and wrapped his arms around the trembling dog. For nearly 10 minutes, the two stayed that way under the dim yellow glow of the bridge light, man and stray, both broken, both alone, finding something unexplainable in each other. When the police arrived after a 911 call from a passing driver, they found Daniel still there, holding the dog close. "He saved me," he said simply, voice hoarse, eyes red. "I don't know why, but he saved me." When the police arrived at Miller's Bridge that frozen night, they were met with a sight that silenced them. The man they'd been searching for all day was sitting on the icy pavement, holding a shivering dog against his chest like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. The wind cut through their jackets, the bridge lamps flickered weakly, and yet there was an unmistakable warmth in that scene, a kind of fragile light that no storm could dim. Officer Jenkins, who was first on the scene, later said he had never witnessed anything like it. The man wasn't talking, wasn't crying anymore, he recalled. He was just whispering to that dog over and over, like he owed it his life. The shepherd mix, though clearly a stray, refused to leave Daniel's side even as paramedics approached. It growled weakly when they tried to pull him away, its body stiff, eyes locked on the man it had just saved. Eventually, Daniel spoke up through cracked lips. "It's okay, he's with me." From that moment, the officers treated the dog like any other hero. They wrapped both of them in emergency blankets and loaded them into the ambulance together. The dog, exhausted, laid its head on Daniel's lap as they sped toward the hospital, sirens echoing through the quiet streets. By the next morning, news had spread. The local police department's Facebook page posted a short message with a grainy photo taken at the bridge. "Tonight, a stray dog saved a man's life." Within hours, it was shared thousands of times. People began calling the shelter, the station, even the hospital, wanting to know about the bridge dog, as he was now being called. Journalists showed up, TV vans parked outside, and hashtags began trending. Bridge dog, guardian angel, saved by love. When Daniel woke up in his hospital bed, the first thing he asked was, "Where's the dog?" The nurse smiled gently. "He's safe," she said. "Animal control took him in last night. They'll make sure he's cared for." But Daniel shook his head weakly. "No, he's not just any dog, he found me." Those words, caught by a nearby reporter, became the headline the next day. "He found me, the stray who saved a life." Meanwhile, at the county animal shelter, the shepherd mix sat quietly in a kennel, wrapped in a blanket donated by a local family. Volunteers said he was calm but alert, always watching the door as if waiting for someone. They named him Scout. He didn't bark, didn't whine, just waited. When Daniel was released from the hospital 3 days later, he went straight there. His hands still trembled from the cold and the weight of everything that had nearly happened, but his mind was clear on one thing. As soon as Scout saw him walk through the shelter door, he stood up, tail wagging softly, eyes bright with recognition. "He remembered me," Daniel whispered, kneeling to meet him. "You really remembered me." Scout pressed his head against Daniel's chest, that same quiet, grounding gesture that had saved his life on the bridge. Cameras flashed, reporters filmed, and tears filled the eyes of nearly everyone in the room. The video of their reunion, Daniel hugging Scout as snow fell softly outside, would later reach over 10 million views in a week. But behind the viral moment was something deeper. When asked why he thought Scout had followed him to the bridge that night, Daniel paused before answering. "I don't know," he said softly. "Maybe he saw something in me that I couldn't. Maybe he knew what I needed before I did." That simple statement captured hearts across the world. Letters and emails poured in, people thanking Daniel for sharing his story, people saying Scout had given them hope. Donations flooded local shelters. Artists painted portraits of the two. A songwriter from Nashville even wrote a ballad titled "The Dog on Miller's Bridge," which played on morning radio stations for weeks. The sheriff's department later held a small ceremony to recognize Scout's bravery. He received an official tag engraved with the words, "Hero of Miller's Bridge 2023. Daniel attended, standing quietly in the back, eyes glistening. When the crowd clapped and Scout barked once, as if in response, it felt like a full-circle moment, a stray once forgotten by the world now honored as its symbol of compassion. In the days that followed, Daniel filed adoption papers. The shelter staff, who had seen countless dogs come and go, agreed unanimously. Scout belonged with him. It wasn't a choice, it was destiny. The adoption photo, Daniel holding Scout close, both of them smiling beneath a winter sky, became an image people couldn't forget. The viral story had started as a rescue, but in truth, it was something far more profound. The world saw a stray who saved a man's life, but Daniel knew the truth. They had saved each other. When the doors of the animal hospital opened that bright Monday morning, a faint ray of sunlight fell across Scout's face. His first real morning in months without pain. The doctors were astonished at how quickly he was recovering. Within days, he began to lift his head, wag his tail, and even try to stand on his shaky legs. The world that had once abandoned him was now cheering for him. Thousands of people across the country were sending donations, blankets, toys, and handwritten letters. The viral story of the emaciated golden retriever who refused to give up had touched hearts around the world. For the first time, Scout was surrounded not by cold streets, but by warmth, laughter, and love. Soon after his recovery, a woman named Martha Jennings, a retired schoolteacher, came forward with a soft voice and eyes filled with compassion. She had lost her husband 2 years ago and had lived alone ever since, her home echoing with silence. When she saw Scout's story online, she felt an instant pull, like fate calling. The moment she met him, Scout slowly walked over and rested his head on her lap as if he knew her forever. The volunteers watched in awe. It was as though Scout was finally home. Martha adopted him that day, promising to give him all the love he had missed. The first few weeks in his new home were quiet and full of discovery. Scout would hesitate before entering rooms, still unsure if he was allowed. He'd look back at Martha for reassurance, and she would gently nod, saying, "You're safe now, boy." He loved sitting by the fireplace while Martha read books aloud or baked in the kitchen. Every time the mailman came, Scout barked softly, a sound of life, of belonging. The neighbors began recognizing them on their daily walks, often stopping to pet the gentle survivor who had become a local hero. Martha's small town of Cedar Ridge quickly adopted Scout as its symbol of resilience. The local newspaper published monthly updates about him, Scout the Survivor's Happy Life. Soon, Scout began visiting schools and nursing homes with Martha, spreading joy and hope. Children would line up just to touch his golden fur, teachers would tell his story during assemblies, and older residents would smile remembering their own lost pets. Scout wasn't just a dog anymore. He was a living reminder of compassion and endurance. One particular afternoon, as the autumn leaves painted the town gold and red, Scout and Martha visited a care home. An elderly man named Mr. Lawrence, a veteran who hadn't spoken much in months, slowly reached out to pet Scout. "He reminds me of my old buddy from the war," he whispered. That day, for the first time in a long time, Mr. Lawrence smiled. The nurses couldn't believe it. Scout had become something more than a survivor, he was now a healer. As the months turned into a year, Scout began to regain his full strength. His fur grew thick and golden again, his eyes sparkled with energy, and his tail never seemed to stop wagging. Martha threw a small Gotcha Day celebration on the anniversary of his adoption. Neighbors, kids, and rescue volunteers gathered in her backyard, singing, laughing, and holding banners that read, "We love you, Scout." It was a heartwarming sight, a once-forgotten stray, now the beloved heart of an entire community. But what stood out most that night wasn't the laughter or the balloons. It was Scout's quiet gaze at Martha. Sitting under the fairy lights, he looked at her with gratitude that words could never express. Every wag of his tail seemed to say, "Thank you for finding me." For Martha, the feeling was mutual. She often said, "I thought I rescued Scout, but truly, he rescued me." Little did they both know that Scout's story was still far from over, and that soon, his bravery would be tested once again in a way that would remind the world just how extraordinary one dog's heart could be. It was a quiet winter night in Cedar Ridge. The town slept under a blanket of snow, streetlights glowing faintly through drifting flakes. Inside Martha Jennings' cozy little house, the fire crackled gently, casting golden shadows on the walls. Scout lay curled up on his favorite rug near the fireplace, his tail twitching as he dreamed, maybe of running through the meadows, or of the children who petted him at the nursing home earlier that week. The clock ticked softly past midnight, and Martha, who had dozed off in her recliner with a half-finished knitting project, breathed deeply in her sleep. But outside, unseen and silent, danger was creeping closer. A loose electrical wire on the porch, damaged from an earlier storm, sparked once, twice, and then caught the wooden beam. Within minutes, flames began to crawl up the siding, orange tongues licking their way toward the eaves. Smoke started seeping through the cracks of the door, curling into the living room where Scout slept. At first, he stirred lightly, his nose twitching. Then his eyes opened wide. He sniffed the air, lifted his head, and froze. The smell was unmistakable. Smoke. Without a moment of hesitation, Scout jumped up, barking loudly, running to Martha's chair. When she didn't move, he barked again, louder, pawing at her lap, nudging her hand with urgency. Martha woke up groggily, coughing. Her eyes widened as she saw the haze filling the room. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Fire!" Panic surged through her veins. The hallway was already thick with smoke, the air choking and hot. Martha tried to stand, but the fear and confusion froze her in place. That's when Scout grabbed her sleeve in his mouth and tugged hard, pulling her toward the door. Step by step, he led her through the swirling smoke, guiding her around falling embers and collapsed wood. Each second felt endless, every breath searing their lungs. When they reached the front door, flames blocked the exit. Scout darted toward the kitchen, where he had once seen Martha open the back door to hang laundry. Barking continuously, he ran in circles until she followed. He jumped against the doorknob, scratching frantically, until Martha managed to unlock it. Cold winter air rushed in, a small miracle in the chaos. Martha stumbled outside, coughing violently, and collapsed in the snow, tears streaming down her face. Scout followed, his fur singed, eyes watering from the smoke, but his tail still wagging as he checked if she was safe. Within minutes, neighbors saw the blaze and called the fire department. Sirens echoed across Cedar Ridge as firefighters rushed in, battling the inferno. Martha was wrapped in a blanket, trembling, watching her home, her memories, go up in flames. Beside her, Scout rested his head on her lap, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His paws were burned, his fur blackened in patches, but he didn't make a sound. Even as paramedics tried to take him for treatment, he resisted, unwilling to leave Martha's side. One firefighter, clearly moved, knelt beside them and said softly, "Ma'am, that dog saved your life." Martha, still in shock, looked down at Scout and whispered, "He's not just a dog, he's my angel." The next day, the local newspaper's headline read, "Hero Dog Saves Owner from House Fire." Within hours, the story went national. News channels, online blogs, and radio stations all shared Scout's picture, his soot-streaked golden fur, tired but kind eyes, and the story of his bravery. Donations poured in again, this time not for survival, but for rebuilding. People from across the country sent messages like, "Scout reminds us of what love truly means." Martha and Scout, temporarily moved into a small cottage offered by a neighbor. Every morning, despite his bandaged paws, Scout would limp to the window and watch the sunrise. There was something poetic in that moment, a dog who had been left to die once, now saving the life of the person who saved him. The community came together stronger than ever. Neighbors helped rebuild Martha's home. Local children made "Thank You Scout" drawings and hung them in store windows. The mayor even announced plans for a town event to honor Scout's heroism. Cedar Ridge was no longer just a quiet town, it was now the home of a legend. But amid the joy and gratitude, there was something unspoken between Martha and Scout. Every time she looked into his eyes, she saw not just loyalty, but something deeper, understanding, empathy, almost human. He had risked everything to save her, and in that moment, they became more than owner and pet. They became family in the truest sense of the word. That winter night didn't just destroy a home, it revealed the purest form of love. Scout had proven that even through pain and loss, a heart that loves without condition can become a beacon of hope for everyone who witnesses it. Spring arrived in Cedar Ridge like a soft sigh of hope. The snow melted, green grass peeked through the soil, and flowers began to bloom around Martha's rebuilt home. Months had passed since the fire, but the story of Scout, the golden retriever who had once been abandoned, rescued, and later became a hero, had reached far beyond their little town. News outlets across the country had shared his tale, and videos of his rescue and recovery were viewed millions of times. Children wrote letters addressed simply to Scout the hero dog, and donations continued to pour in, not for rebuilding anymore, but to help other rescue animals like him. Martha, now in her 70s, would often sit with Scout on the front porch, sipping tea as the sun dipped behind the trees. His golden fur had turned paler, streaked with white, and though he walked slower, his eyes still sparkled with the same gentle light that had saved her that terrible night. Every afternoon, neighborhood children would visit just to pet him, and Scout would wag his tail patiently, letting them hug him and take pictures. It was as if he knew his story wasn't just his own anymore. It belonged to everyone who believed in second chances. Then, one warm summer evening, Martha noticed Scout struggling to climb the porch steps. His breathing had become shallow, his movements slower. She sat beside him, resting a trembling hand on his head. "You've done enough, my brave boy," she whispered softly. "You've given me more love than I ever deserved." Scout lifted his eyes to her, tail wagging faintly as if to say, "And you saved me first." That night, under a silver moon and the sound of crickets outside, Scout passed peacefully in his sleep, his head resting beside Martha's chair. The next morning, the town mourned. Flags flew at half-mast outside the town hall, and candles were lit by his bronze nameplate, the same one the mayor had given him after the fire. The local school children created a garden in his memory, filled with sunflowers, daisies, and a small wooden sign that read, "Scout's Garden, where love never dies." People came from nearby towns to leave flowers and dog treats. Some knelt, whispered prayers, while others simply stood in silence, wiping their eyes. But the story didn't end there. Martha, though heartbroken, decided to honor Scout's legacy in the most meaningful way possible. With the donations that had come in from around the world, she started the Scout Foundation for Rescue Dogs, a small nonprofit dedicated to saving abandoned and injured dogs and training them to become therapy animals for hospitals, nursing homes, and veterans. What began as a local effort soon grew into a national movement. Within 2 years, Scout dogs were comforting children in hospitals, visiting senior homes, and helping soldiers cope with trauma. Each one carried a small tag around their collar that read, "In memory of Scout, proof that love can heal." Television networks revisited the story every year, calling it "The Dog Who Saved a Town." Martha was invited to speak at animal welfare conferences, but she always started her speech the same way. "I didn't rescue Scout, he rescued me." The line would bring every audience to tears. As the years passed, Cedar Ridge became known as the town of the hero dog. A life-sized bronze statue was placed in the park center, a beautiful sculpture of Scout sitting proudly beside a small girl, representing all the lives he'd touched. The plaque beneath it read, "For Scout, abandoned but never broken, loved by all, and forever remembered as the heart of Cedar Ridge." Martha visited the statue every Sunday, bringing fresh flowers and sitting quietly as the breeze moved through the trees. Sometimes she swore she could still feel him there, a warmth beside her, a gentle brush of fur against her leg, or a faint echo of a wagging tail in the wind. She would smile through her tears and whisper, "You're still with me, aren't you?" When Martha passed away years later, she was buried beside the garden that bore his name. Locals said it was fitting that the two souls who had saved each other were finally together again. Today, visitors still come from all over to see the park, the statue, and the garden. They take pictures, leave flowers, and share Scout's story with their children. And somewhere beyond the clouds, where love never fades and loyalty never ends, Scout runs free again, golden fur shimmering in the light, as he races across endless fields toward the woman who once gave him a home, proving one final truth: that the purest love doesn't need words, and even after death, it continues to shine, forever.